Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use VBA to create a macro that will allow you to add new worksheets to your workbook, but then also name them. And I'm going to approach this with two different ways to name them. First of all, I'm going to use just a static string value like the color green and add the worksheet and name it at the same time. The other example I wanted to show you was how to use today's date to name a tab, and then also going to show you how to do a little error handling, if you will. So without further ado, let's get to it. But actually, before we do that, if you'll do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and set your notifications so when I add new videos, you get the notification that I've added something new. And then hit that like button as well and leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about the video. I would certainly appreciate it and love to hear from you. So anyway, let's get back to the point here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the developer tab. And if you're in your own Excel and you're looking at it and you don't find the developer tab, I'm not going to go into how to find your developer tab in this video. I actually did that in a previous video where I did a quick introduction to VBA, so I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. So if you don't have the developer tab, fear not, just go watch that video and I'll show you how to find it. So anyway, let's get to our Visual Basic editor, and I'm just going to hit Alt F11. And so let me stretch this out a little bit. So we're in book 1 here. I need to click on Microsoft Excel Objects, right click, go down here, insert module. Now I have a place to write my code. So I'm going to start by naming my sub procedure here. So I'm going to name this sub add sheet and name. And we'll just put and name custom on this one. Press enter. So first thing I need to do is I need to add the sheet. And if you watched the video before, this is going to be very similar to the video that I did showing you how to add a sheet with no name. So we're just going to use, actually I'm going to do a comment here to stay with encouraging you to use comments. So I'm just going to put add a new sheet. And you start a comment by pressing the, or actually typing a single quote, and then hit enter, and that should turn green font, and that just shows you, or tells you that's a comment. And so I'm going to do sheets.add. So this is exactly the same thing that we did before, but now we're going to name the new sheet. So I'm going to make a comment. And letting anybody viewing the code know that the next line of code is naming the new sheet. So I do that by typing active sheet, because when it adds a new sheet, when Excel adds a new sheet, if we don't do anything else, that becomes the active sheet. So this is perfect. So active sheet.name is the method here. Then we do equals, and in double quotes, we'll just put green. I'm going to use green as the name. It's just a string value. So if we want to add a string value, just make sure that you enclose that in double quotes. It really is that simple. So let's shrink this up a little bit so we can see what's going on here. And I'm going to run the code. I'm actually going to step through it. So I'm going to use F8, and that will highlight the first line, which is the name of our macro. And now I hit F8 again, it'll go to the sheets.add, and when I press F8 it will add the sheet. So at this point, before it runs the line of code that names the sheet, we've got what we would expect. If you've done this before, we've got a new sheet, and of course it names it sheet 2 because sheet 1 is already taken. So it hasn't been named yet. We've got to run the next line of code. So we do that by pressing F8, sorry. And then when we do that, notice here that it did actually take that string value that we had here, and it named that worksheet green. So now we just need to finish this up, F8 one more time, and the macro has been run. So now let's look at how to add a new sheet and name it using today's date. This can be very useful. I've seen many a use case for this particular method on naming worksheets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start typing sub. And I don't know if you've done this before, so if you've we can continue to use this same module. I just need to type sub, start typing, and I'm going to name this add sheet and name date. And again, I don't know if you've seen the other videos I've done on this. There's no rhyme or reason to the camel case that I use. It's just something that I started doing a long time ago, and I just kind of stuck with it. You can use all lowercase letters if you want. Just make sure there's no spaces in your name. And I'm going to hit enter. And notice there automatically it adds this line after the last sub procedure and the new one once we get this in sub here. And we've started this new macro. So what I need to do is add a new sheet and name it. I'm going to type a comment for that. All right. So it's going to be sheets.add. We've seen that before. And then I'm going to do active sheet dot name. Seen that before. And now I'm going to use this method by which we use a worksheet function. So if you know anything about Excel functions, you'll know that we can use a couple of these worksheet functions. Let me go ahead and type this out. Worksheet function dot text. And then we're going to, for our first argument, we're going to use the function now, which gives us the time now, but we're going to use, the format's going to be m-d-yyy. And that's basically going to give us right now, but it's going to give it to us in the format of the month, the day, and the year in 4 digits. So this is a worksheet function. It's the same text function you could actually use in a worksheet cell. And then you could use the now function to give you the exact time now when this runs, the exact time when this line of code runs, but it's going to print it out as text in this format where it's going to be the month, the day, and the 4-digit year. So that's going to end there. Let me go ahead and shrink this up so we can run that. All right. So starting with the title, let's do F8. Go down to sheets.add. It did add the sheet 3 of course. And in this case, we should expect it to give us the current date for the name. And there you go, 9/10/2018. F8 one more time. It ends the sub procedure. Now, you know how to name a sheet with a string value. You know how to, actually, this is actually a string value too, but to give you the exact date, we use the now function, a worksheet function. And to do that, again, just to review, the active sheet name is going to be using the worksheet function dot text. So it's that text. And there's many worksheet functions you can use in VBA. I mean, you can use the if function, you can use, you can use the VLOOKUP function in this. Now, in this particular case, you're not going to use the VLOOKUP for anything. Or actually, you could, I guess, technically, you could look up a value from a worksheet and use that as your name. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's just a whole plethora of worksheet functions that you can use in your VBA. So anyway, one more thing I want to show you. So if you had this macro and every time you add a new sheet, you wanted to use the date. The problem with this is we don't have like the time. We could actually, bear this out to the minutes and the seconds. But in this particular case, I could do it in this macro, I guess, too. But I want to show you what happens if we press enter. it's going to give us this error. It's this runtime error 1004. Basically, it's telling you that name's already taken. You got to try a different one. So if you have, and let me just show you too, if you've never seen this, if you press this debug, it's going to highlight the line of code that's giving you the problem. It's throwing the error. And of course, we can't do this because we've already got a sheet that's named 9/10/2018. So how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with that by using an error handler, and that sounds really like sort of ambiguous or vague or even technical, but it's really not. It's actually as simple as putting in a couple of lines of code. So let me go back up here. At the very beginning, what I want to do is I want to add this line of code that says on error, go to, one word, my error. Now, my error is just the name of the error handler. You could name this error or whatever that was. You could name this error. You could name this, Todd's error. This is just sort of a variable, but we're just going to call it my error. And so what that means is we're going to put another line down here, and we'll put it down here at the very bottom, and it's going to be my error. It needs to be exactly the same as this. And then we put a colon. And in this particular case, this is going to be your, if you've never done this before, we're going to use a message box. In this particular case, we need to put MSG BOX, and this is going to give us a message box. And notice when I hit tab, it gives me this tooltip here showing me all the possible arguments that I can use in my message box. But really all I want to do is I want to put a prompt in, which I just need to put a double quote there, and I'm just going to put in the text that I want the message box to tell us. And I'm just going to say there is already a sheet called that, I guess you could say, or sheet with that name. So basically this is a more elegant way to handle the error than letting that ugly error that we just saw pop up on the screen. Because if you have a user, they may think, what in the world is this? This looks like Greek to me, and it's like, did I break it or whatever? But this is a more elegant way to handle that. So what happens is, let me go here, and let's just give an explanation with a comment. So yeah, that's our comment there. This is what we want Excel to do if an error occurs. So basically at the beginning of your macro, you're saying, look, on error, go here. Just go here. If there's an error in anywhere in here, just go straight to this line. And what that basically is saying is that my error is to run or to show a message box that says, look, there's already a sheet with that name. Now in this particular case, we know the only error that's going to happen is that this is this one line of code. There's no reason that, we've already tested this, there's no reason why Excel couldn't add another sheet to this workbook. So we know that's the only error we've got to handle. And the other thing we've got to do, so before our error handler down here, this my error, we need to type in a line of code that says exit sub. And so let me explain why you have to do this. So what happens is we know that this will be the line of code that's going to be the culprit if there's an error. So what happens if there's an error, instead of it stopping like it did before and through that error, that raw error, that 1004 or whatever it was, if this throws an error, it's going to go to this line and this message box is going to be generated. When you click OK for that message box, it's going to continue from this line. And so in order to get out of the sub and not run this my error handler again, we need to put this exit sub in here so it basically gets out of the macro without running this all over again. Otherwise it would just, be a big problem. So you don't want to run this and then click OK and then it run again. Does that make sense? So I hope that makes sense. So okay, let me walk through this. So here's our macro. Here, we're going to run this code, and it's going to immediately, the first thing it's going to say, hey, look, if there's an error in here at any point, just go to my error. And so from there, it goes to sheets.add, adds the sheet. If there is a sheet that's already named with this name, with today's date, we know that's going to throw an error. So what's going to happen is, because of this on error, go to my error, it's going to go to this line of code. It's going to make this message box appear. And when it does, you'll click OK as the user, and it would still essentially be on this line of code. So it's got to go to the next line of code. And in order to skip this, since we've already used it, you need to put this exit sub in here to get out of the sub procedure. So let's just run this real quick, and we'll run it one line at a time. So F8 highlights the name of the sub procedure. It goes to on error, go to my error, and nothing happens. It's just processing that line of code. So it now knows, Excel now knows in its memory, if there's an error in here, I'm going to go to this my error line of code and process that. So we're going to go sheets.add. It adds the sheet. We see sheet 5 there. And now we know this is going to throw an error. So now look, because it threw an error, it automatically goes down to this line of code where it says my error. And it's going to run this, and it's going to make this message box appear. So F8, there is already a sheet with that name. So I click OK, and now notice it goes to end sub because we have this exit sub here. And boom, we're done with that. So if I were to run that now, not step through it, just run it real quick, boom, this message box appears, clicks OK, we click OK, and we're all done. And now we have these extra sheets that don't have a name. But anyway, so there you go. You've seen how to name a sheet using a string value, actually 2 string values, but we've also used a worksheet function that allows you to name the sheet today's date. And then we've seen how to handle an error using an error handler. So I hope that wasn't too much, and I hope you learned something from that. So again, if you would be so kind to hit that subscribe button, set your notifications, hit the like button, and leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Thanks everybody for watching. Please take a minute to like and subscribe, and be sure to check us out at theaccidentalexcellist.com.